All right, man. Let's move on to the next topic here, man. I thought this would be a good idea to do. We put an article together, obviously, with the Trey Amos top 30 visit that just came down the pike. We put a little article together comparing the top cornerbacks on the Packers' radar. We've done this with some of the key positions right now. So keep in mind, the players listed here are top 30 visits, and I'm really trying to key in on the top of the draft. Okay, so these are guys that might potentially be 23 or 54, or maybe somewhere in between if we trade back in the first or up in the second. Okay, so here's what we wrote. With Jair Alexander's future in Green Bay still up in the air, the Packers have scheduled top 30 visits with 2 top corners on our PTA big board. Let's take a look at how Dane Brugler sees both. Okay, so these are our PTA rankings here on our big board. The first one is Shavon Revel Jr., cornerback out of East Carolina. He's in the number 26 spot on our big board. Okay, here is Dane Brugler's scouting report on him. A 2-year starter at East Carolina, Revel was the boundary corner in former defensive coordinator Blake Harrell's quarters-based scheme. After grades forced him to go to the junior college route out of high school, he drew East Carolina's attention and later emerged as an NFL prospect. 17 passes defended and 3 interceptions over his final 15 college starts. Unfortunately, a knee injury sidelined him for most of his senior season in the pre-draft process, which kept him from testing or working out for the NFL teams before the draft. With his size, speed, and physicality, Revel changed East Carolina's approach on defense because of his press man skill set. He used his length to disrupt routes and explosiveness to stay attached. Though he does a great job playing through the hands of the receiver, he is guilty of grabbing and holding too much, especially in off coverage. That issue should continue to fade as he hones his technique in the NFL. Overall, his durability will be questioned, understandably, but Revel is a boundary bully. I love that. With terrific speed, length, and ball tracking skills, he has the talent of an NFL starter. Keep that in mind, though. Dane Brugler did put a 2nd to 3rd round grade on him. Tim, what do you think on the surface here when it comes to Shavon Revel? Obviously, sounds like the knee injury is not going to be an issue at all. I heard, I think it was Ryan that was mentioning there's a ton of different injuries. Hopefully we'll get to that here in a minute with his weakness tab. But what do you think here based off that scouting report? Do you think 23 is a little too high for him, or do you think that might be in the sweet spot there?
I think if we're toying with the idea of going corner at 23 and we're saying that the knee injury is not going to be a serious issue, then I don't think it's too crazy. I really don't. He may very well be that top corner on the board at 23, depending on how the draft board falls. So I would go ahead and agree with the sentiment that he had a setback with the ACL and that he's worked past it and it shouldn't affect his rookie year. And if you go into the draft assuming that he'll be good to go, I think there's a lot of reasons that on the surface 23 may seem like a reach for him, but he could prove to be one of the absolute best corners in this draft when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I agree, man. Okay, let's look at the strengths here. And do want to mention, who was it? Joseph said zone instincts. Greg Cosell raved about this guy. He said he's the best press man corner in the entire draft. Well, obviously with Jeff Hafley's defense last year, we played a lot more zone, right? We played way more zone than media was making it sound like we're going to be predominantly a man coverage team. Hopefully we prepped you guys properly for that going. They are dead wrong. Trust me, you will notice it when we get to the season, and that's exactly what happened. Not because we're so smart. It's just because someone runs a lot of man coverage in college. Like most teams play man coverage in college, and anybody who watches a little bit of college ball knows that, right? But the thing that he did say was playing top down and playing off coverage. And when you're playing zone, especially if there's any kind of match principles with it, you've got to be able to read and react those route combinations. You got to know when they run wolf, my job is if and then I'm going here, right? If they run a dagger concept, I'm going if and then here. A slot cross, I know there's nothing to protect unless the wheel sneaks out of the backfield or it's a leak on the Y. I can hammer down on that dig, or maybe look for a crosser coming from across the field, right? Those type of things that you got to read and react to. Greg Cosell said that's going to take some refinement. So, again, you look at this draft, there's no perfect prospect. Ashton Gianti is the closest thing to it because they're just going to hand him the ball and go, don't let him tackle you. He's damn good at it, right? But when you look at all the other prospects, it's kind of like there's going to be pros and cons to each of them. So, for him, his pro – press man coverage. weakness. He's has lack of experience playing off, and there may be some injury concerns. But here's the positives: impressive size speed combination, above average arm length with a wingspan wider than any cornerback drafted last year. So his wingspan is greater than any cornerback that was taken last year. Loves to press, looks to get physical and disrupt routes early. Has a knack for using sideline and escorting receivers there. Eats up grass quickly with acceleration to make up gaps in coverage. Shows astute timing and eye balance in bait and drive. Love that bait and drive. Play off a little bit, bait the quarterback, and drive on the football, right? Budding playmaker skills. Had 3 interceptions in his final 4 games. Returned 2 of his 3 career interceptions, 50 yards or more for touchdowns. So you get that pick 6 instinct to him, much like Maxwell Hairston does out of Kentucky. Functional tackler, willing to drive, wrap, and finish. Blocked field goals in consecutive weeks in 2023. That's interesting. Faced numerous roadblocks to get this point in his career. No question about mental toughness or work ethic. That's the second scouting report I've seen where people were like, this dude loves football, and his teammates and his coaches have done nothing but say, this, you want this guy on your football team. Yep. So what do you think about the positives there, Tim? That's a pretty good looking list there, man.
I love it. I love it. Especially when you combine that with what you just said about, him preferring to play, man-to-man a little bit closer to the line. Let's look at Jair, right? Jair was the opposite. He was a guy we had to try and coax into playing closer to the ball, closer to the man. And it was kind of an uphill battle, square peg into a round hole. You get a guy that's comfortable playing press man. I think it's a little bit easier to kind of mold him and teach him to play off and teach some zone concepts. So when you look at these strengths that he has, man, the above average arm length, etc., it makes all the sense in the world. Again, the only question mark is that injury history. And, if we believe the experts and he's good to go, then I think he's good to go, man. I would feel like it's a bit of a reach if we go first round corner, but if he's the first round corner that we take, if we don't get a Jahdae Barron or somebody, then hey, let's go.
Yeah. Coach Lynn says Packers love zone, but if they get this guy, they could mix and match more on the back end. Coach, you're thinking just like I am. You can start to unlock what we call lock defense, right? Where you can go like a cover 3 lock or a cover 2 lock where you've got one guy playing man coverage and then you've got the 2 deeps, where you can even run Tamp out of it and just go, all right, you lock onto this guy, we're going to play zone on the backside. We're just going to rush 3 or 4 type thing. If you've got a guy who can do that, and here's the thing. Last year we played, predominantly zone defense. We're still going to play more zone than man this year. But don't be surprised if Hafley knows that every team in the league that's on their schedule this year is going to be watching their tape from last year and going, all right, they're predominantly zone. He'll probably mix in a little more man coverage this year to try to make himself a little bit unpredictable. And you had some match principles, which essentially turns into man coverage, right? And it's kind of what Coach Lynn is talking about here. If you got that kind of guy on your defense, because you keep in mind, everything that was already on the roster, Tim, in this DB room, as opposed to them revamping, or with the exception of them revamping the safety room, was made to play zone match defense, right? So it was kind of that. It was less man coverage and more of the, hey, look, let's just kind of keep everything in front of us, right? The 2 high shell, although we did go to single high way more that last couple of years with Joe Barry. So the roster was kind of built to play that type of defense. Now you can get a couple guys in here that, all right, let's mix in a little more man. Let's do a little bit more. And you guys know I'm not a man coverage fan, but I'm telling you, man, these offenses and these offensive coordinators, they get paid a lot of money to figure you out, and they are going to figure him out. And that's why most of the time defenses, first year under a defensive coordinator that's good, they excel. Their numbers get way better. Second year, they take a step back a little bit, because now you've got to make that decision just like a week-to-week basis when you're game planning for an opponent. You got to in every game going, okay, just you go into the season saying, do we keep doing what we did last year knowing we did it well, but knowing the offenses are going to try to attack that? Or do we try to mix it up a little bit? Now, I'm not saying either is right or either is wrong, because you can really outsmart yourself too, Tim. I'm of the opinion, keep doing what you were doing and then adjust to what they're adjusting to. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. Especially like you said, considering there's 17, 18, 19 games on tape here of this system. I do like the sentiment of bringing in a man corner, though. That can give you that ability to play man when you need to situationally. But I agree. You don't want to change your whole philosophy. you almost want to know, like, you want to have that sixth sense that, hey, they're figuring us out. Cool. We know that they're leaning on us and they figured this out. Here's the time to switch. Here's what we're going to do. We have a contingency plan for it. Whether that's mixing up personnel or it's, mixing up our defensive calls out there on the field, and having some versatile guys is going to help. It really is. So you can be zone heavy, but you still need a couple guys that can get in there and, man to man, play some ball when you need it.
Yeah. Here are the weaknesses, Tim. Thin-limbed. I wish I was thin-limbed, by the way. Thin-limbed.
Yeah. No, you don't.
Thin-limbed and doesn't carry heavy mass on his frame. Gets upright in his pedal, which will disrupt his balance in man-to-man. Can do better job staying on the same plane in vertical transitions. Grabby at the tops of routes and will draw attention when the ball is in the air. Outside only corner at East Carolina, primarily in the boundary. What do we mean by boundary? That's the short side of the field. So if the offense is on the left hash, then he would play the left side of the field. If they were on the right hash, he'd play the right side of the field. Probably not going to happen in Green Bay, because in Green Bay, what they like to do is they like to keep guys on their respective sides, right? It's just like you're either the left corner or you're the right corner. Now, that could change, but when you put someone on the boundary, what you're saying is it's your job to cover their boundary X, and you got to win in a phone booth. Typically, those guys are good at man coverage, right? So let's see. Will be 24 on draft weekend, so some people see that as a negative, obviously. Here's the injury stuff. Now, listen to this, Tim. Let's see how concerned we are on this. Torn ACL and partial meniscus tear in his left knee during practice September of 2024, which sidelined him for the remainder of his final season and most of the draft process. Missed start of 2022 season because of boxer's fracture to his right hand suffered in a preseason camp. It just sounds like a cool-ass injury, boxer. It's just awesome. Boxer's fracture. Yeah, I was out there punching people in the mouth.
Probably punching that ball out, right?
Probably was.
Love it.
Multiple injuries from high school, including a broken collarbone as a junior. That does not concern me at all.
Yawn.
Yeah, not. And serious head trauma and other injuries from a car accident as a sophomore, November of 2017.
If it was something to be concerned about, he wouldn't even be playing football anymore. If you're talking head trauma from 2017, there's no way he continued to play football if it was that serious.
Right. So the ACL is the only concern I have.
Yep.
And again, there was reports that he cracked over 20, I think it was 21 miles per hour on a treadmill already. So I'm not as concerned about the ACL. We're going to keep the box red just as that identifier for us. So I'm removing the injuries for me, man. You're talking about a hand fracture and a broken collarbone, right? Multiple years ago. And like you said, a car accident that happened in 2017.
Yeah, that's nothing burger.
So the ACL is the only thing. And again, Packers had him in for a top 30 visit, Tim. So they got their hands on that knee. If they feel good about it, then we know it's good to go. So
yeah, if they're not concerned, we shouldn't be, Like you said, especially with the collarbone, like we learned that with Aaron Rodgers, the way that they're able to do surgeries now, I mean, you end up with a stronger bionic collarbone than you had before. So I don't think that's anything to worry about. And if you take away the injuries, like you said, looking at these weaknesses, a lot of this is typical of a man corner, right? Grabby at the top of routes will draw attention when the ball's in the air. That sounds like a man-to-man guy to me. Could do a better job staying on the same plane in vertical transitions. Sounds like a man press corner to me. Things that you can coach up and coach out. So, and him being 24 on draft weekend, that's not his fault.
Right.
We just won't tell Goody that he's 24, and maybe he'll still get drafted. So I don't think there's any major concerns here with the weaknesses. Even the thin-limbed and doesn't carry heavy mass on the frame. I mean, a guy can put on weight.
Right.
We saw Jair doing that this offseason. We saw that a couple weeks ago. Looks like he put on a little bit of muscle mass. That's things you can do. You can get with your nutritionist and your training staff, and you can add weight. So I don't think there's any major red flags here with him.
Chuck says the age thing is weird to me. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too, Chuck. Because again, you draft somebody young. Well, he hasn't played much football. It's going to take a couple years. You draft somebody 1 year older, and he's kind of old.
He's kind of old, yeah.
What are we doing here? Like, Trey Lance, one of the biggest draft busts in recent history, right? It was, he could throw the football, out of the stadium. He's pinpoint accurate. He's got mobility, all these things that the 49ers fell in love with. The only thing is he has lack of experience because he's so young and he hasn't played much. Look at what happened. So
Yep.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that, Chuck. The age thing doesn't affect me at all, man. You're talking about still being able to get 6 good years out of a player if they're 24 years old. The difference between a 24-year-old and a 22-year-old means you might get 2 more years out of them if they're an absolute stud of a draft pick. When I hear a player's a little bit older, I think of Bo Nix last year that many people dogged it, and he went out and balled his ass off. So that's kind of how I see it, man. All right, that's going to do it for hour 1. For those of you listening on the pod, we will see you on the other side for hour 2. We're going to continue this conversation and talk about the next corner that's at the top of the list for the Packers in terms of top 30 visits that might be on their radar for 23. We appreciate y'all.
For those of you listening on the pod,
welcome into hour 2. And let's get to it, Tim. Let's continue this conversation, man, and get to the next corner that is that's on the Packers.